What's up, guys? It's Analyst, and let's get into week 11. So, I'm just going to jump straight into this. No need for lengthy introduction. If you guys aren't subscribed, please do. I'm going to make these videos weekly. I apologize that I wasn't able to get this out before Thursday. I had some stuff come up during the week, but let's jump into this now. So, we got first game, we got New Orleans hosting Atlanta Falcons. The big story in this game, Taysom Hill getting his first official NFL start. He only has 18 career pass attempts, so this is gonna be quite interesting. The other big story here is if you play on ESPN, you might be able to play this guy as your tight end. Well, not might, you will be able to play this guy as a tight end. So that's pretty big, especially because the inconsistencies at tight end this year. If it was wide receiver, maybe it'd be a little different, but regardless. If you don't have Travis Kelce, he's starting for me at the tight end position, especially with George Kittle still on IR and stuff. I mean, they're on a bye anyway. But regardless, Taysom Hill is my tight end 2 this week. He's a decent flex option. He's a quarterback playing the tight end position in ESPN for whatever reason. Still don't understand it, but I have him in a couple leagues, so I'm happy about it. And there's two sides to the coin, so if you're going against someone who has Taysom, you're probably pretty upset about it. And if you do have him, you're probably pretty excited about it. So regardless, we are where we are. It's the situation. You kind of, when it comes to how this affects the rest of the team, you're going to upgrade these running backs. I think Alvin Kamara is not going to see anything less than 10 targets in this game. Latavius Murray might be getting some extra work. I don't think they want to rely on Taysom Hill's arm, which is not something they've ever been able to do. 18 career pass attempts, as I mentioned. So I think Alvin Kamara is going to be the running back 1 or running back 2 this week. He's dealing with an injury, but he is expected to play in this game. Latavius Murray, I think he could be a low running back 2. So if you're in a desperate spot, I don't hate Latavius Murray this week at all. Wide receivers, Michael Thomas, you got to downgrade him. Not that he's been doing anything great either way, but yeah, I mean, I'd put him in wide receiver 2 category. Yeah, I mean, I think Taysom Hill's not going to throw the ball more than 15, 20 times in this game. I think they're going to try to run it out. And considering how much the running backs are going to be targeted, I think Michael Thomas could be like 5, 6 targets. What's he really going to do with that? So, slant boy. Sorry. But, yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of Michael Thomas this week. If you have another decent option, like a Deontay Johnson or Travis Fulgham, I'm a little shaky on. A.J. Brown, something like that, then I would probably sit Michael Thomas for them. And I know it's a great matchup for Michael Thomas as well, but even in the decent matchups with Drew Brees, he didn't do much. So, Manuel Sanders, I'm not interested in. Jared Cook, not interested in. As far as Atlanta goes, I do like Matt Ryan this week. Todd Gurley, it's not a great matchup, but considering he's had the bye to rest up that knee, maybe he'll get 20, 25 touches. I think as long as he gets a goal line touchdown, which he has been in just about every single game this year, then I think he could be a low running back 1, running back 2 this week. So Gurley, if I have him, I'm fine starting him. Wide receivers, Julio Jones can be covered by Marshawn Lattimore. Not really worried about that for Julio's sake. If anything, it could be better for Calvin Ridley. Maybe Matt Ryan will look at Calvin Ridley a little more, who this week is coming back from a mid-foot sprain, completely healthy, not in the injury report. So I do like Calvin Ridley a lot this week. He could regain his wide receiver 1 status that he had prior to those injuries. I'm not Austin Hooper. He's on the Browns now. But Hayden Hurst, he's been very consistent since Raheem Morris has stepped up as the new head coach. As I mentioned, Julio Jones is going to be covered by Marshawn Lattimore, so could only mean good things for the other pass catchers on this team. So I do like Hayden Hurst as a tight end 1, like a lower end tight end 1. Calvin Ridley, I think he bounces back this week, and Julio Jones, he'll be fine. He'll end up getting 6, 7 catches for over 100 or 90 or whatever it is. He'll get you past the week with 15 points or so, even with Marshawn Lattimore on him. And I will be throwing some DraftKings stuff in here as well. I don't have the prices on too many of these guys. This wasn't really the game I was looking at. I'm not sure the price on Taysom Hill, though. That might be interesting. And 3.5 point favorites against Atlanta. It's kind of odd considering how much success Atlanta has had since Raheem Morris has taken over and considering they're starting Taysom Hill. So, yeah, I'm a little suspect about that. I might take that Atlanta +3. Cleveland hosting Philadelphia. The spread has moved to 2.5. It used to be, I think earlier in the week, it was 3.5. So, leaning more towards Philly in this game, at least the odds makers are. I don't know how I feel about this game. Cleveland, they want to run the ball, especially now Odell Beckham Jr. He's been out for the whole entire year with a torn ACL. But I think Baker's going to have to throw it in this game because Philly's got a decent run defense. And I know they're going to try to jam it in with Nick Chubb and jam it in with Kareem Hunt. And by the way, Kareem Hunt had a great week last week with Nick Chubb back. Anyone think Hunt can only perform when Chubb is there? Because there was that long span where Chubb was out and Kareem Hunt, even in good matchups, just really didn't show up. So a little odd to me, but they make a good duo. I do like Kareem Hunt a little better than Nick Chubb this week. I think I have Kareem Hunt one spot above Nick Chubb. So that'll be pretty interesting. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. Jarvis Landry, if he gets his target share, I think he'd get you over 10 points. Some other wide receivers I'm not really interested in. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's kind of starting to make a role for himself. Rashard Higgins also carving out that wide receiver 2 role. So keep an eye on that wide receiver 2 battle. Tight end wise, Austin Hooper, he had 2 targets last week. With considering Baker threw the ball 12 times, that's not bad. So in this game, I think Austin Hooper can do a little better. I'd have him as a low end tight end 1. As for Philadelphia, Carson Wentz, he's been very up and down, a lot more down. He's gotten no help from the rest of his team, from the offensive line, anyone. I mean, he just has no help whatsoever. But he's starting to get some reinforcements. Lane Johnson, Dallas Goedert's back, Jalen Reagor, Alshon Jeffrey. So I don't hate him in this game, although he didn't really show up against the Giants last week. Big note here, Myles Garrett is going to be out this game. I don't know if he's considered a high contact or if he contracted COVID himself, but regardless, because of COVID, Myles Garrett is not going to be playing this game. That's a huge benefit to Carson Wentz, and it's a pretty big downgrade for that Cleveland defense as well. So something to note. Miles Sanders, I do like Miles Sanders as a running back 1 this week. I believe I have him in the top 5, top 6 area. Wide receiver wise, Travis Fulgham did not get it done last week against the Giants. He had a really tough assignment against James Bradbury. I'm expecting some bounce back here against Cleveland. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jalen Reagor have a big game here. I'm not interested in Alshon Jeffrey. And Dallas Goedert, another guy who I really think is going to have a big game here. I'm a fan of Dallas Goedert in this matchup. Cleveland has not been great about defending tight ends. So, if you have Goedert, I'd consider him a decent tight end 1. Jalen Reagor, flex option. Travis Fulgham, low wide receiver 2 for me because I want to see how the targets shake out. Because Travis Fulgham, he had those 3, 4, 5, there was 3 or 4 games with 10 plus targets, and that was because they had no one else. But even in the first game with Jalen Reagor back, his targets dropped from 11 and 10 to 7. And now we have Goddard back, Alshon back. So I really want to see Travis Fulgham's new role on this team. So I am going to downgrade him for this week. I do think Cleveland sneaks away with the win here. I don't understand. I don't know Cleveland's record, but I believe they've lost 3 games or 2 games, which is insane because they do not seem like that type of team at all. But here we are, 2020, everyone. Next game here, we got Washington hosting Cincinnati Bengals. So Alex Smith in his in his last 2 games, he's had over 300 yards passing. So I do like Alex Smith in this game. The Cincinnati defense is nothing to write home about. They don't have Carlos Dunlap anymore. They don't really have much linebacking group. Their secondary has been devastated by COVID and injuries and stuff like that. So Alex Smith, I think he could have another 300-yard game here. Running back wise, Antonio Gibson, I like him a lot this week as well. Like I mentioned, Cincinnati defense, nothing to be scared about. J.D. McKissick, he's going to be a weekly PPR value. I mean, he had, 14 targets last week, 14 targets the week before. Alex Smith just does not want to take hits, and he's dumping it off to J.D. McKissick to avoid that. So McKissick's going to continue to be his guy. Maybe Antonio Gibson can become more of that guy as well. So just keep an eye out for that. McKissick, PPR, weekly start. Antonio Brown, weekly start regardless. Wide receiver-wise, Terry McLaurin, I think he could have a pretty good game here. Like I mentioned, Alex Smith has had 300 yards in each of his last 2 games. Not really interested in any of the other Washington receivers, Steven Sims or Cam Sims or any of those other guys. But I am interested in Logan Thomas. Cincinnati is bottom 3 when it comes to covering tight ends. Logan Thomas in the last 2 games has been pretty consistent. He's getting a healthy target share. He's had over 10 points. So, I think if you're in a tight spot, Logan Thomas could be your guy this week. Logan Thomas also on DFS, $3,300 in DraftKings. I do like that value a lot, and he's going to be in a lot of my lineups. So, just a little thing there. As far as Cincinnati goes, Baker Mayfield, you never know what to make with Baker Mayfield. He's had big games where he throws 4 or 5 touchdowns and goes off, and he has games where he just doesn't do anything. They hand the ball off to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Ideally, that's how they want to run their offense. What am I talking about? This is Cincinnati. I apologize. I guess I just mished them up. Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow, he's going to be under a lot of pressure in this game. Chase Young, that big front 7 for Washington. So I'm a little worried about Joe Burrow making some mistakes, throwing some picks. I'm not a huge fan of him this week. The secondary is not something to worry about with Washington. But regardless, I think Joe Burrow might struggle a little bit. Running back-wise, Joe Mixon, again, missing this week after the bye. A lot of people felt he would come back, including me. But Joe Mixon's going to spend a little more time out. A friend of mine, Fantasy Doc, said he's expecting him back by week 13. I guess the midfoot sprain was a little worse than we thought. So we'll see. But Joe Mixon is expected to return this season. So hopefully you guys have Gio Bernard if you have Mixon. And you've been okay. But when Mixon gets back, I mean, his week 14 and 16 matchups are very, very good. He's got a tough week 15 matchup against Pittsburgh. But overall, Giovanni Bernard was able to have a decent game against them. So, I think Joe Burrow's got a good playoff schedule overall. Wide receiver-wise, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, both are weekly starts. T. Higgins really took control of that wide receiver 1 spot last week after the bye. We'll see if that continues. Maybe he's going to be a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. If he did, I would not be surprised. Rookie wide receivers tend to do a lot better in the second half of the year, somehow, even with this ridiculous rookie wide receiver class. So, I do like T. Higgins in this game. I think he's a weekly starter at this point. And I do like Tyler Boyd as well. And we're not going to talk about any of the Cincinnati tight ends because that would be a waste of time. I do think, Washington being the favorite doesn't really sit well with me. I think Cincinnati squeaks this one out. Actually, you know what? No, I think Washington does. With Alex Smith back, the way he's been playing, I think it gave Washington a little bit of a spark. So, Tennessee 6.5-point underdogs against Baltimore in this next matchup here. So, Lamar Jackson just came off a loss against a New England team that before going into the game was like 3-5. So, kind of alarming for Baltimore. I mean, the Patriots didn't exactly have Stephon Gilmore back there, but the Patriots know how to play a guy like Lamar. They know how to take away his best weapon. They know how to force him to be in uncomfortable situations. So, regardless, Tennessee's defense is nothing like, New England's defense is bad, but Baltimore at home, I like Lamar's chances here. So I do like Lamar Jackson. Not a fan of any of these Ravens running backs until 2 of them get hurt, and there's only one guy. Then if 2 of them get hurt and there's one of Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Mark Ingram, then I'll play the running back on a weekly basis. But right now I can't play any of them. I've dropped J.K. Dobbins in my leagues. I was holding on to him, holding on to hope that Baltimore would get their head out of their ass and give J.K. Dobbins a workload. But they haven't. They did for one game, and he showed up, but then they stopped. So, regardless, staying away from this backfield. Marquise Brown, very, very inconsistent. It's a good matchup. So, if you have him on your team and you're really desperate, then he could be okay. but he's getting less targets than Willie Snead, and Mark Andrews is the only other guy who you can kind of trust in this offense. So that being said, I do like Mark Andrews. I would not play him over Taysom Hill if you're in that position on ESPN. Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, not a great matchup on the road in Baltimore. Don't really like him, although Baltimore's defense has been not as good as most have hoped. Running back wise, Derrick Henry, he's a weekly start. I mean, he's going to get 20, 25 carries here. He's had some extra time to rest through the mini bye. I could see him having over 100 yards. If he gets a touchdown, he might be okay this week, but I'm not expecting anything crazy here from Derrick Henry. Wide receiver wise, A.J. Brown's got a tough assignment against Marlon Humphrey here. Could open things up for Corey Davis, but it really could open things up for Jonnu Smith, who over the last 2 weeks has been he's been targeted a good amount. He's actually shown up again the last couple weeks. And I think if the Ravens have one weak spot, it's going to be that tight end position. So Jonnu Smith, I think, is going to be fine in this game. A.J. Brown's got a tough assignment, but I'm still starting him. Corey Davis, I don't really have too much trust in, so he's probably going to be riding the bench. I think Baltimore runs away with this game. No one in DFS I'm really going crazy about in this matchup. Detroit heading into Carolina to take on the Panthers. So Detroit 2.5-point favorites here. Carolina still undecided on whether Teddy Bridgewater is going to be playing in this game or not. They called him a true game time decision, which is good because it's a 1 o'clock game. We don't really have to guess. But if Teddy does end up playing, I don't hate him in this matchup. Running back wise, Christian McCaffrey is still out for this week. He could return next week, more likely the week after. But Mike Davis, he's not been getting it done with Christian McCaffrey out. But I think that could change in this game. I mean, Detroit is the worst defense against running backs. And if Teddy Bridgewater is out, or even if he's playing, he's still injured, then they might want to rely on Mike Davis a little more. So I think Mike Davis, regardless, is going to be a running back 1 this week. He's still getting a full workload as a starter with Christian McCaffrey out. So if Mike Davis has been disappointing you lately, throw him back in your lineup, and it's a good matchup to take advantage of. Wide receiver wise, DJ Moore, I don't know. He had that big week last week. Nobody was expecting him to do that against Tampa Bay. I would call him a weekly flex option. It's hard to trust him on a weekly basis. Especially, look, if Teddy Bridgewater is out, DJ Moore is going to be on the bench. And here's why. Because PJ Walker from Temple has that connection with Robbie Anderson, and him and Matt LaFleur all together, all from Temple. So I think it's going to be a Robbie Anderson type game, if anything, with Teddy Bridgewater out. If Teddy Bridgewater is in, I'll call DJ Moore a flex. Robbie Anderson also a flex. If Teddy is out, I'll call Robbie a flex, and I'll sit DJ Moore. I'm not going to talk about the tight ends. For Detroit, Matt Stafford expected to play in this game. Kenny Galladay and DeAndre Swift both going to be out in this matchup. Swift, a little bit of a surprise during the week. He was entered into the league's concussion protocol. Kind of surprised by that. I guess something happened in practice, but regardless, he's going to be out this week after finally getting a workhorse role the week prior, and this would have been a good matchup for him. But if you have DeAndre Swift, do not worry. Next week, he has a very good matchup against Houston. He's going to have an extra week and a half to get over and out of the concussion protocol, so he'll be back and he'll be fine. But as for this week, it's a great matchup. Carolina also really struggles against the run. Adrian Peterson, So the Lions they're 2.5-point favorites. Even if it's PJ Walker, then I think game script is going to be in Adrian Peterson's favor. When it comes to Adrian Peterson against Kerryon Johnson, Peterson's been the one to get more snaps, more targets, and so I think Adrian Peterson's a desperate start for me on DraftKings. He's only 4,000, so that's a pretty good price for a guy who can get you 10, 15 points. Pretty easily. I'm not all that interested in Kerryon Johnson at all. I'm more so interested in Adrian Peterson. So just, make a note on that at DraftKings. Mike Davis also this week, 6,800 on DraftKings. Pretty high price for a guy who hasn't hit in quite some time. So I'm not sure if I'm really willing to pay that. But when it comes to Detroit, I think I'll definitely be paying $4,000 for Adrian Peterson. Wide receiver-wise, Marvin Jones, he's proved to be pretty effective with Kenny Golladay out of the lineup. TJ Hawkinson coming off a bad week, but he could bounce back here against Carolina as well. Yeah. So I think where is it? I think if Teddy Bridgewater plays this game, Carolina could squeak out the win. But if they don't, then Detroit might come up on top. We got Houston hosting the New England Patriots. So Cam Newton coming off a pretty good streak, won 2 in a row, especially one against the Baltimore Ravens, who seem to be one of the better teams in the league. As far as Houston goes, this is going to be a much better matchup than they had last week. Last week was just a complete crapshoot against the Browns. They scored 1 touchdown, and that was the Pharaoh Brown of all people, like the 3rd, 4th string tight end. Regardless, they're not expecting a hurricane during this one, so I think this is going to be a big boost for the Houston offense. New England Patriots, they're expecting Stephon Gilmore to be back in this matchup. So Deshaun Watson, I don't hate him in this matchup. Duke Johnson, I really like this week. And hear me out. I know he had like 5 points last week. First of all, no one on Houston did good last week, but Duke Johnson had 14 carries. He had a target, and he wasn't really able to do all that much with it. But going against New England, they don't really have much of a defensive line. They really have little to nothing when it comes to linebackers. So I think Duke Johnson can actually expose the Patriots in the running game. And if he gets 3 or 4 targets, and look, he's played 90% of this. I think he played 95% of the snaps last week. So Duke Johnson, 5,400 on DraftKings. New England's been pretty bad against running backs overall. Complete workhorse role, much better matchup, much better game script. So, I think Duke Johnson's a pretty good start this week. Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks. I'm not sure who's going to see the Stephon Gilmore assignment. I'm assuming Brandon Cooks, but you never know. Brandon Cooks has been kind of playing like a hybrid slot type role, so it could end up being Fuller. Either way, I think both these wide receivers can do okay, even because I don't think Stephon Gilmore is going to shadow one of these guys. I think he's just going to kind of line up on one side, and if one starts having success, maybe he'll shadow him and switch. So I'm not too worried about it. I think Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks are both startable in this game. Maybe a Brandon Cooks revenge game. Who knows? Not looking at these Houston tight ends. As far as the Patriots go, Cam Newton, I think he's a top 4, top 5 quarterback this week against the Houston Texans. They cannot stop the run, and that's what Cam Newton does. He's also 6,200 on DraftKings, which is a fairly good price. And Jacoby Myers, who's been killing it with Cam Newton, he is 4,900 on DraftKings. So I'm 100% going with the Cam Newton Jacoby Myers stack. It's a pretty decent stack that could end up paying off very, very well. So starting both those guys there. Running back wise, Damian Harris, he's a little banged up. He's expected to play in this game. I am a little worried about Damian Harris. Like, it's a great matchup, but Sony Michel is being activated off IR, and he's expected to play in this game. So I just get worried. I mean, it's the Patriots. You never know what they're going to do at running back. It could end up being a Rex Burkhead game. It could end up being Sony Michel comes back and he gets 20 carries. You just never know with the Patriots. Considering how good Damian Harris has been, I'm okay starting him in anticipation that he'll get 10, 15 touches, take it for over 100 yards, maybe get a score as well. But with Sony Michel back, it does complicate things. So, I'm still rolling out Damian Harris, but I'm just going to lower my expectations just a little bit there. Wide receiver-wise, I already mentioned Jacoby Myers. He's the only pass catcher I'm really looking at on this team. If this ends up being a high-scoring game, then Jacoby Myers, if he gets like 10 targets, he could be a low-end wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 this week. So I do like Jacoby Myers a lot. And I'm not sure any of these tight ends or anyone. N'Keal Harry got no targets in his first week back, so no interest there. Let's move on to Jacksonville hosting Pittsburgh. Jake Luton expected to start in this matchup as well. Gardner Minshew still dealing with an injury. James Robinson dealt with a little bit of an injury during the week, but He is fully healthy. He's going to be fine for this matchup. It's not a great matchup for him, but I'd still classify him as a top 10 running back just because of the workload he gets, the targets he gets, and the consistency he's put out. So James Robinson is a de facto running back 1. DJ Chark, it's not a bad matchup against Pittsburgh. Believe it or not, Pittsburgh has actually been pretty weak against wide receivers. And if it's a negative game script, which considering Pittsburgh is 10.5-point favorites, then I think DJ Chark could bounce back a little bit in this game. Last week it ended up being Keelan Cole. And you guys have to understand, when a team gets a punt return or kick return touchdown, or they have a safety on their team, like, when another team gets a safety on them, then it takes away a whole drive. Or even if it's like a long run or something, like it takes away an entire drive. So when Keelan Cole gets that return touchdown, that could have been a drive where DJ Chark gets 2 or 3 more targets and he's fine. So just keep that in mind because they did have that return touchdown. It did take away a drive last week. The Packers were pretty good about using a lot of the clock. So yeah, just I think DJ Chark is going to be fine. As far as the Pittsburgh Steelers go, Big Ben coming off a huge game, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. I think he's in line for another good game here. Running back wise, James Conner, he's been pretty inconsistent, but this would be the matchup to throw him into your lineup. I mean, Jacksonville's one of the worst, if not the worst, defense against running backs. So James Conner, if I have him, I'm putting him in my lineup this week. All 3 wide receivers, Juju Smith, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool, all very much worth starting in this matchup. I mean, somehow they've all been pretty consistent. Deontay Johnson is my favorite of the bunch. In every game he's played, he's had at least 10 targets when he's completely healthy and he's not taken out of the game for an injury. So Deontay Johnson is my favorite of the bunch, but so I'd call Deontay and Juju wide receiver 2s, and I'd call Chase Claypool more of a flex because he is a rookie. Sometimes he has more targets, sometimes he has less, sometimes he's just the odd man out. So I think Juju Smith and Deontay Johnson, both wide receiver 2s. Chase Claypool, definitely flex worthy in this matchup. Eric Ebron, considering how bad tight end is, take a shot with him. Maybe he gets a touchdown. He seems to be the 4th target on this team, which isn't bad considering how much Ben Roethlisberger is throwing the ball. Whew. We're speeding through this. Deontay Johnson also, for whatever reason, 5,900 on DraftKings. Chase Claypool, Juju Smith, both over 6,000. So if you're looking at the best value of these wide receivers on DraftKings, it's going to pretty easily be Deontay Johnson for me. New York Jets going into LA to take on the Chargers. Justin Herbert, I love this week. I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. Running back wise, look, Kalen Ballage was a full-blown workhorse last week. And now he's got a revenge game against the Jets. So Kalen Ballage, he had like 5 targets, 15 carries. That's like 20 touches. So, if you have Ballage, Justin Jackson's still out. Joshua Kelly not doing anything. Austin Eckler still on IR. Kalen Ballage, I'm calling him a running back 2 this week. Just know it is the Chargers. It is a bit of a situation. They did put him back on the practice squad last week. And then they took him back off the practice squad. I don't know if that was just because of the way they're running their roster, but either way, it makes me a little suspect about how much faith they have in Kalen Ballage. So, regardless, I think he's a running back 2 this week. When it comes to the receivers, Keenan Allen, I think he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver. Justin Herbert and him, great stack on DFS. It's a little expensive. Keenan Allen's starting to get up there in price. He's been floating around 7,000. I think he's like 7,400 now. Justin Herbert at 6,800, which is a price I do like. So yeah, I'll take that Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen stack. If you're not going to go Cam and Myers, then I have no problem with Herbert and Keenan Allen if you want to pay up a little more. Mike Williams could be a sneaky play this week. I mean, if Justin Herbert has a great game, which the Jets have been giving up a lot of great games to quarterbacks, then Mike Williams could be on the receiving end of 1 or maybe 2 touchdowns. Hunter Henry, not a huge fan of in this matchup. So, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. He's been very inconsistent. It's really just been the Keenan Allen show. And I don't blame him. I mean, Keenan Allen's fantastic. As far as the Jets go, Joe Flacco expected to start this game. Sam Darnold still out. LaMichael Perrine. Look, this is a guy you need to pick up. You need to keep on your radar. The Jets want to see what he's got. The Jets want to see what kind of a player he is. He's coming off a bye, a rookie running back, and they said they're going to give him the workload. Frank Gore is going to take a huge backseat, and LaMichael Perrine is going to take up most, if not all, the snaps. He's going to get most, if not all, the touches. And this is a game where I think the Jets, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jets win this game. The Chargers always find ways to lose, even when it doesn't seem possible. Against the Patriots before their bye, with a healthy complement of Rashad Perriman, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, when they have their whole offense together, they don't look bad. And the Chargers defense hasn't been anything crazy. I understand they have Bosa. I understand they have, some of these big name guys, but overall their defense is giving up a lot of points. So don't be surprised if LaMichael Perrine is a running back 2 this week. I'm not going to put him in my lineups or anything like that, but just keep an eye on LaMichael Perrine. They want to see what they have in him. They want to see if they have to make a move for a running back next year or if they can roll with him in the future. So they're going to give him the work and they're going to see what he can do. Keep an eye on Perrine. Perrine. Oh. Wide receiver wise, Jamison Crowder is going to be my pick out of Mims and Perryman. I want to trust Rashad Perriman. I want to trust Denzel Mims. I just want to see more of what Joe Flacco is going to do with this offense. I want to see more of who he's going to target because we've had a bye week with these wide receivers getting extra work. I love Denzel Mims, the wide receiver, the prospect. I just want to see him get a consistent target share so I can call him an every week starter. If that happens, I'll be very happy. So tight end wise, Chris Herndon hasn't done anything in a while. Don't worry about him. 9.5. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets won. I'm still taking the Chargers though. We are getting towards the end here. We got Denver hosting Miami. Miami 3.5 point favorites. With Tua, they've been killing it. Let's look at Denver real quick though. So Drew Lock, questionable from this game. Don't know if he's going to end up playing in this one. They're calling him a game time decision at 4 o'clock. Not that anybody's gripping on their seats waiting to see if Drew Lock's going to play. If he is out, I think it does downgrade Jerry Jeudy just a little bit because Brett Rippon, he's going to be the backup. We saw him go for Tim Patrick a lot. So I think it downgrades Jerry Jeudy. Melvin Gordon, I'm probably sitting him. He hasn't done anything lately. Him and Phillip Lindsay just been stymied in that run game. So I don't trust either of those guys. Jerry Jeudy's been getting a heavy target share. Game script is going to be in his favor. If it's Drew Lock, I'm fine with flexing Jerry Jeudy. And Noah Fant, it's a good matchup for him. He's been banged up a lot recently. He's been getting a decent target share. He just hasn't really done too much with it. So with how bad, I'm going to have a recording here. With how bad tight end has been, I think Noah Fant is a tight end 1 this week. Blah, blah, blah. As for Miami, Tua, this may not be a game where he has to throw it. Now, when it comes to the running backs, Salvin Ahmed, him and Kalen Blanche had this weird breakout week last week. Ahmad had close to 20 touches or something like that. He just became the workhorse. This is, as you guys can see here, this has the lowest total of the entire week. So not a game where, you're not expecting a lot of touchdowns, not expecting a lot of points in this matchup. And the odds makers are usually fairly accurate. If they weren't accurate, then this would just be easy money. So, that being said, I am a little hesitant about starting anyone in this game, really. Salvin Ahmed, you have Matt Breida coming back from injury, so I have no idea what this backfield is going to look like. Wide receiver-wise, for Miami, Devontae Parker, he's been getting the most targets with Preston Williams out, but it's a good matchup against Denver, too, so I don't hate Devontae Parker. Mike Gesicki, he's been getting some targets, but like I said, hasn't really done much with it. Total's pretty low. I don't really want too much part of this game. Indianapolis hosting Green Bay. Now, Indianapolis is actually 1.5 point favorites here. That's pretty interesting. Green Bay's been pretty hit or miss. 51-point total, not bad. I don't like Phillip Rivers at all. But running back wise, I talked to you guys last week. I talked about Nyheim Hines. I talked about him having a decent game, and he did. And I talked about Michael Pittman having a big game, and he did. I mean, last week was a pretty good week for me when it came to that Indianapolis-Tennessee game. So what do I think is going to happen with this backfield in this game? I mean, look, Jair Alexander is supposed to be back in this matchup, and he's been, when he played, one of the best corners in the league this year. So I'm going to be staying away from Michael Pittman. I'm going to pivot more towards these running backs. I think if Indianapolis wants to win this game, they're going to have to attack them with a running game. Nyheim Hines, he ended up being the best back last week. It could be the case again this week. I mean, if I have Hines, I'm considering him an every week flex play. But I'm not overreacting either. I'm not calling him a wide receiver. I'm a wide receiver. I'm not calling him a running back 1 or running back 2 for the rest of the year. Jonathan Taylor, if he gets the touches, this is a pretty decent matchup for him. I mean, if he just gets 10, 15 carries, maybe he gets over 10 points finally. So I'd call him a desperate start, but I'm not relying on him by any means. These tight ends, I don't know if Jack Doyle's even active, or I just don't trust any of these pass catchers. I'm just looking at these running backs here. I'm looking at Nyheim Hines, and I'm looking at Jonathan Taylor being a desperate option. As far as Green Bay goes, Indianapolis, the way they run their offense is they're not going to let you get the deep ball, but they're going to let you get short intermediate passes. I think this is a game where Aaron Jones racks up 6-7 catches. Devontae Adams may not have the yardage in this game, but I'm sure he'll have a touchdown or two. So I'm expecting more of a short passing game from Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay, which I think will bode well for Aaron Jones. Don't really trust Robert Tonyan or any other pass catcher not named Devontae Adams. Al Lazard expected to be back in this matchup, but expectations are not high for him either. I need to start bringing water with me. You guys know that already. My throat... I thought I had water behind me. My throat is dry as hell right now. Alright, so we got Minnesota hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Minnesota 7-point favorites. Bodes well for Dalvin Cook. I mean, this could be a game where Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen totally disappear. Not because they're bad, but because it's just... I think Minnesota's going to blow them out of the water. Dalvin Cook is my running back 1 this week. He got 30 carries last week. He's going to get a very heavy workload. It's a great matchup for him. Dallas cannot stop the run. Wide receiver wise, I already mentioned, I think this is a game where Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson might disappear a little bit. It's a good matchup for them, but I mean, Dallas is really going to have to catch up. Otherwise, it's just going to be a Dalvin Cook show, as we've seen. But when it comes to Dallas, I mean, Andy Dalton, obviously not starting him. Ezekiel Elliott, it's a pretty good matchup for him, so... Ooh, the Bengals have placed Joe Mixon on injured reserve. That's tough. I just got that notification. That's tough. So that means 11, 12, 13. So that means he, at the very earliest, could be back for the fantasy playoffs. But he's expected to miss an additional 3 weeks from... So week 11, 12, and 13. He could be back week 14. We'll see. Hopefully his foot issue isn't terrible. But that threw me off a little bit. But Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is a decent matchup for him. Wide receiver-wise, Amari Cooper, only 5,400 on DraftKings. I love that price for him. With Andy Dalton, Amari Cooper has been okay. I mean, he's been able to get you through the week. So at 5,400, you're getting a guy who can get you 15 points, 10, 15 points. I think that's pretty good. Another guy I really like is CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb, only 5,000 on DraftKings. Minnesota, where they've really been weak on that pass defense, is the slot. Jeff Gladney in the slot has been pretty bad. So considering that's where CeeDee Lamb does most of his work, I think Lamb could end up having a good game in this matchup as well. Las Vegas Raiders hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. So Kansas City 8-point favorites. This is tied for the highest total in the week. I think Derek Carr, this could be a game where he throws 2 or 3 touchdowns, probably 3 touchdowns for him. So I think Derek Carr could have a pretty good game. Josh Jacobs had 2 touchdowns last time these two teams met. Wide receiver wise, I don't trust any of these Vegas wide receivers, but Darren Waller, I mean, this could be a game where they lean on him. So I think there's going to be a lot of tight end points between him and Travis Kelce in this matchup. Darren Waller, I'd classify him, I mean, he's a tight end 1. That's kind of where it boils down to. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, he's my QB1 this week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, healthy, good matchup. I don't know. I think Clyde is a low running back 2, because with Le'Veon Bell, I mean, this backfield has just been kind of a mess. So I classify Clyde as a low running back 1. Wide receiver-wise, Tyreek Hill, you're starting. Travis Kelce is always your starting. And that's really it here. Tampa Bay hosting the LA Rams. Pretty bad matchup for both these teams. I mean, the Rams have been one of the best defenses in the NFL when it comes to running, defending against the run, defending against the quarterback, defending against wide receivers. All around, the Rams have been very, very good. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Tom Brady in this matchup. I'm not a huge fan of Ronald Jones in this matchup. I think this is going to be more of a Leonard Fournette game. I think this is going to be a game where they're going to have to throw the ball and play catch-up. So I like Leonard Fournette a little better than Ronald Jones this week. Mike Evans, I really don't like this game. I'm going to put him on my sit list. I think Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin could be good for this game, but I think Mike Evans is going to be the one to get shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. Antonio Brown had like 8 targets last week. So, yeah, I think he could actually be a pretty decent start. And Gronk, considering how bad tight end has been, I understand starting him as your tight end, blah, blah. As far as the Rams go, Jared Goff, I think he's going to have to throw in this game. They're going to be behind. And, yeah, I mean, I don't trust any of these running backs. Cam Akers now working his way into an even role next to Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson. It's a complete mess. I don't trust any of these running backs. Wide receiver-wise, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, I think they're both startable in this game. I thought they were both startable last week, but it ended up being Josh Reynolds. Surprise, surprise. But in a game where Jared Goff might have to throw it 40, 50, 60 times even, which he has done before, I just think it could mean a lot more targets for Kupp and Woods. So I like both those guys this week. Not a huge fan of Gerald Everett. And Woods is going to be the one to see outside coverage. So I think Cooper Kupp might have the advantage in the slot. So yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Appreciate any of you guys listening. And I'll be sure to get the next week's YouTube video out before that Thursday night game. So that'll be before Thanksgiving. So I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you guys next week.